Hello and welcome to Q&A time, the answers part 1. Thank you to the 23 viewers who posted questions. Everyone has asked some really excellent questions, and now I suppose you're expecting some really excellent answers. The first question is from Amy of From the Dusty Bookshelf. She asks, what is the painting of the young man reading at the start of your video? Well, Amy, I have searched high and low to find this painting again on Google Images, but without success. I must have been lucky to find it the first time, but I cannot find it now. So if anyone knows who it is, then please let me and Amy know in the comments below. Amy also asks, where do you do most of your reading? Is there a favourite reading chair somewhere? Each morning I spend about an hour reading in my study, sitting in the chair you see me in my videos. Every evening at 7 p.m. I turn off my computer, even if I'm in the middle of a movie. Then I go to bed and read for 2 to 3 hours. So sitting propped up in bed is my favourite place to read. Debbie Baker asks, I'd be interested to know who your favourite European writers are. Writers whose books I have enjoyed include Giuseppe de Lampedusa. His novel The Leopard is superb. Gustave Flaubert for Madame Bovary, and Guy de Maupassant for his short stories. I've also enjoyed the novels of Alexandre Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers, and The Last Cavalier. Mary Tumulty asks, in what part of Great Britain do you currently live? I live in a place called Shoeburyness, which is on the Thames estuary and which is a suburb of Southend-on-Sea, which is in Essex on the south-east coast of England. Is it the same area in which you were born and raised? I wasn't raised, I was dragged up in the slums of Birmingham in a place called Aston. I actually lived in Asylum Road, which is appropriate as it was like living in a lunatic asylum. Arian of Book Zealots asks, have you always been a reader or is this an adult recreation? I'm not sure where my love and passion for reading books came from, as I do not remember there being any books in my house when I was growing up. My first memory of reading was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I can see myself now in a nursery class and there is a folding book rack in front of me and I read all the books in the rack. So I was an avid reader from a very young age. David Wardrop asks, have you met many authors in person? Thank you, David. This makes me sound as though I'm a world famous author going to all the parties and meeting other famous authors. If only my life had been like that. The only author I have met is the one I live with. The Bookish Bryants ask, who is your all-time favourite American author? I recently read and enjoyed True Grit by Charles Portis and Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, but I would have to say that the American author who has made the deepest, longest lasting impression on me was Harper Lee with To Kill a Mockingbird. Amelia of Amelia Reads asks, do you speak other languages? I spent many years learning French, and when my first wife and I visited Paris, I was able to ask for a cup of coffee or a beer and to say a few words in French, but I never became fluent in that language. I spent an intensive year learning Russian and I managed to learn over 10,000 words in Russian and to read simple text, but again I never became fluent in Russian. Have you ever lived outside the UK? Yes, in the late 1980s I emigrated to South Africa and planned to spend the rest of my life there. However, circumstances intervened and I returned to the UK after having lived there for 5 years. Valentino Garcia asked, "Are you a translator?" My wife and I have translated 4 books from Russian into English. We start off with a literal translation. Then we discuss the meaning of each sentence. From this I construct a grammatically correct sentence in English. Then we read the Russian sentence again to see if I have correctly understood the meaning and the sense. We may need to rearrange the word order, substitute other words to get closer to the meaning. Once we have established the correct meaning, I then read over the English sentence to satisfy myself that it is grammatically correct, but that it also has an indefinable quality that I call flow. Once we have completed the whole text, I read the whole text again to see how it all hangs together as a whole. I will then suggest improvements if something just does not feel right. In this way we will have gone over the whole book 5 or 6 times until we are both completely satisfied. We are particularly pleased with the Russian-English dual language textbooks that we have produced together. Valentino also asked, "How old were you when you got into reading?" I was about 4 or 5 years old when I became a voracious reader. Peter Gardner asked, "What subject do you wish you knew more about?" When I was in my 20s, I had a great thirst for knowledge, and I wanted to know everything about everything. So for 10 years I went to the library every week and took out 4 books on the same subject, and the following week I took out 4 books on another subject. In this way I covered all the areas of knowledge that I wanted to know about. I also owned a 30-volume set of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, which I perused for subjects that interested me. Now, of course, if I want to know anything, I use the internet. Nenny Nestler asks, "Who's your favourite author?" W. Somerset Maugham. I have read 15 or 16 of his novels, his short stories, plays, and some of his essay collections. Who's your favourite author outside of your home country? Jacques Casanova de Seingalt. His memoirs are very well written, and the people and incidents he describes are endlessly fascinating. Faith of Faith and Books asks, "What one book have you reread the most?" Apart from the King James Version of the Bible, which I have read between 30 and 40 times, I have read From a College Window by Arthur Christopher Benson multiple times. What author have you reread the most? When I considered my reading habits, I realised that although I have read many novels twice, I cannot think of an author whose books I have read multiple times. There is always something new that I haven't yet read that I want to read. And now here's a quick recap, and I'll be back soon with part 2 in another BookTube video.